Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I am reading out loud and breaking down my Brown University supplemental essays from over 5 years ago. If you don't know who I am, my name is Naman. I'm a first year medical student and I've been editing essays for the past 5+ years on and off of all different types of applications. I'm really passionate about writing and editing essays. My goal with the channel is to try to share as much information as specifically as possible so that you can have an easy time to get into your dream program and write the best essays you can. So today I'm going to tell you what worked, what didn't work, what I like, what I don't like, and just reading out loud these essays so you have some sample essays just for any college that you're applying to. So the first prompt is, why are you applying, or why are you drawn to the areas of study you indicated? And I'm just going to read this out loud. So it says, "No way," I stammered, holding a euthanized mouse that seemingly refused to accept death. It tossed and turned violently as its autonomic nervous system continued to fire off signals. Poor creature was born lacking the vital SOX11 gene in its cortical cells, thus becoming an unwitting ally in my quest to learn brain development. Over the next week, I stained the tissue sample with fluorescent antibodies and visualized cell structure under a microscope. Though unforgettable, the experience was typical during my research internship, in which I became astonished that sublime feelings and intellectual pursuits are all rooted in the simple firing of neurotransmitters and bits of DNA. With access to transgenic technology, I could help map the very program that makes us conscious. My curiosity to delve deeper into the realms of the brain and personal passion to serve humanity ultimately draws me to medicine as a career path. Okay, so you can pause the video and read it again if you need to, just in case I was reading too fast or too slow for you. But ultimately, I'll tell you the thought process that I had into writing this essay and what I wanted to demonstrate and why I chose specific decisions that I did. So this type of prompt comes up a lot, which is, why do you want to study what you indicated in your application, or what are you interested in right now? Or even though you might be unsure about what you want to do in the future, what makes you interested in the subjects that you're interested in right now? And this is a very difficult question to ask people because most of the time we're not exposed to enough things to be able to decide what we want to do in the future or what we're interested in. And so ultimately the best types of stories comes from experiences and anecdotes and stories that we can share with people about times that we became interested in something. So telling somebody that I'm interested in math and biology and genetics is it's pretty interesting, and why I'm interested in it, that's pretty interesting. But what's better is if I shared the first time it was in a laboratory, or the first time that I took my AP bio class, and something that I was learning and why that connected with me so strikingly, and what I found fascinating about that, and sharing the whole discourse and the anecdote and the story about that, that really, really solidifies and grounds the story in terms of an experience that you had. And that's when you make it really believable to the reader that you are very drawn to the area of study that you're indicating in your application. And so the goal with this is that whatever you're interested in, you want to share an anecdote or a story about either when you first got interested in it, or when you started getting more and more interested in it, or a project that you worked on, or a professor or a teacher that you had who inspired you, or maybe you were reading the news and something that really struck you. But basically, you want to just share a story and the outcome and why you got interested in the subject just because of that story. So I hope that helps you. Now I'm just going to dive into a couple of specifics about this essay that might be able to help you. So I started out with this paragraph. I started out when I was writing my first few drafts with a very, very detailed explanation of what my research project was exactly. And slowly I realized that that wasn't so interesting. I needed to simplify it so that somebody who wasn't working in my lab or who wasn't extremely familiar with the research project that I was doing could kind of understand what I was trying to say and what sort of work I was doing and what was the end result of my work. And so instead of starting out with this really complicated research title and abstract and explaining what my research was and why I found it interesting, I wanted to start out with a story. And the most vivid story that I could remember was one of the times that I was holding this euthanized mouse, and it was just like moving and shaking, and I was really scared, and I didn't know what to do. And the professor was explaining to me like the thought process about why it's still moving even though it's already euthanized, and I was thinking like, oh, why do these mice have to die for me to learn about this brain development? And it was kind of like the striking experience that I had. And so I wanted to write about that, but I didn't want it to be the whole paragraph because I just wanted that to be like an example of an experience that I had. And so I think that's why I just had one or two sentences in the beginning talking about that. And then you can notice that I started talking about the exact details that I started doing in the lab. So I was able to stain tissue sample, I was able to visualize cell structure, and I was things like that. And ultimately, I also wanted to connect it to something bigger about why do I like neuroscience, why do I like science, and why do I like biology. And ultimately, that came from this this thing where I was astonished that sublime feelings and intellectual pursuits are all rooted in the simple firing of neurotransmitters and bits of DNA. So basically, I'm saying that what's really inspiring to me is the fact that all of these things are just contained within our brain. And something that really inspired me was that our brain is really fundamental to identity. If you have a heart transplant, you can still be the same person. But if you have a brain transplant, then you're a completely different person. So that was something that I wanted to capture in this essay. And so the goal is that when you're reviewing and editing your essay for these types of what are you interested in essays, you want to try to ask yourself, is every single sentence contributing to your desire to want to study something? And if you're having sentences that are not really demonstrating your passion or your interest, then you want to try to get rid of them and replace it, or just get rid of them completely, but try to replace it with something that's actually showing your desire to study that field. And um, and just if you have to take away two things from everything that I just said so far on this type of essay, which is why are you drawn to the area of study that you indicated, just remember, one, share anecdotes about times that you got interested in that subject, and two, try to make sure that every sentence is contributing to that narrative about why you got interested in that field. So one, stories, and two, every sentence should count. And if you remember those two things, then I think you'll have a really great time of writing this essay. Try to remember that, this type of essay about why are you drawn to a field that you indicated in it's really important for you also to kind of figure out, what do I want to study in college, and is this a true narrative about the things I'm interested in? Because ultimately what you're interested in doesn't really matter. It's how you demonstrate what you're interested in and how well you can justify that that's something that interests you. And this is going to change. Don't take too much pressure about what you're interested in at 17 or 18 years old. It's going to change throughout college. And so just be open-minded about the new things that will interest you. Okay. If you have any questions about this one, leave it in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them, or make a different video for it. And I'm going to move on to the next essay. So this is why Brown and why the Brown curriculum. So I'm just going to read it out loud, just like the last one. By trusting its students to define their own curriculum and interests, Brown uniquely nurtures a culture of choice and independence. The open curriculum guarantees that every student in a given classroom has enthusiastically chosen that course, thus inspiring fervent participation in insightful discourse. As a multifaceted, ever-curious student, I want to attend a college that not only allows me to explore diverse areas of interest, but has curricular policies in place that actively encourage it. Because Brown removes many distribution requirements and empowers students to take courses pass-fail, I can implement my interdisciplinary perspective, taking specialized courses like health economics and transformations of the research university, even though they fall outside my intended concentration. I was surprised to learn that Brown employs over 200 students every semester for its unique undergraduate teaching assistant program, which bolsters a communal sense of responsibility wherein students are invested in one another's learnings. My friends at Brown tell me that professors are devoted to the campus community and demonstrate a genuine love for their subject. Students can easily arrange time outside class to request assistance, learn the professor's research, or pose curricular questions over coffee at Thayer Street. Okay, so I think the number one takeaway that I want you to get from any of these why essay, why our college, is I want you to focus on as many specific details about that college that you could mention that relate to your passion. So if you were a student there, can you actually map out what your 4 years would look like what sorts of resources you would take advantage of, what sorts of classes you would take, what sorts of teachers you would want to ask questions from, what sorts of research projects you might be interested in, what sorts of clubs you would be involved in. All of those things, those are things that you might want to mention in this essay, because what most people think is that this essay is a time to show off what you know about that college or show off all the generic stuff about that college that's on their website. And that's not true, because that essay prompt, why our school, should show just about as much about yourself as it's showing about the college. If you say that I'm interested in taking these 3 classes, you're not just talking about the college itself, you're also talking about what you are specifically interested in. If you're interested in a study abroad program at this country in Europe, right, because it offers these opportunities, you're also showing what you're interested in and what sort of student you would be at that school. And so the goal here is not only just to talk about Brown University itself, but also to talk about the specific things at Brown that you would take advantage of, and therefore show what type of student you are. And so my goal was to try to explain that I would want to take advantage of this broad-based liberal education that Brown offers to become a better physician or a better student who's wanting to study biology and medicine and all these things. And so I just want you to notice how I try to include specific details in this essay. So you can see I talk about, I kind of open with like the main theme, which is that I like that there's this choice and independence, and you can kind of decide what you want to do. I talk about how I want to explore diverse areas of interest, and I talk about how I want to take these classes like this and this, even though it falls outside my intended concentration. So you can already see that I did quite a bit of research to figure out what is my concentration, or what concentration would I want to do, and then a couple of classes that I would want to take that don't fall in that concentration, and how Brown actually allows it. I talked about how there's a teaching assistance program that I want to join and also benefit from. I told them that I have friends at Brown who told me that the professors are really devoted to the campus community. I told them about, getting coffee at Dyer Street, professors' research, and all these things that are pretty specific details that can explain not only about that college, but also the things that I want to take advantage of as a student. And so your goal here is to try to be as specific as possible, share what interests you, and share what type of student you would be at that college. Okay, I hope that helps. Again, leave any questions you have down below, and I'll move on to the next essay. So this is a short one, and to be honest, this was probably the toughest essay for me, just because I didn't really know what to write about. But it says, tell us where you have lived, for how long since you've been born, whether you've always lived in the same place or perhaps a variety of places. So I wrote, I'm a second-generation Indian in the US. I watch Bollywood films, participate in traditional dances, and cook cultural foods. Although I was born in Rajasthan, India, I've spent all but the first year of my life in the US, spread between the 2 coasts. I've lived in rainy Seattle suburbs for 8 years, from age 1 to 8, and then Northern Virginia from age 9 to the present. Living so close to the political capital gave me an unparalleled opportunity to visit museums often and develop a love for political activism. Whew. All right, so this is actually a pretty simple prompt. I wouldn't tell you to overthink it, but what I would encourage you to do is that some people I've seen just kind of list the locations they've lived in, or if they've just lived in one place, it's just like a 1-sentence answer. And you really want to take advantage of the full space here, right? You don't want to leave any words untouched, or you want to try to take up as much space as possible. And since they're giving you quite a bit of space to answer this, you want to tell a story about, where you've lived, how those things have influenced you as a person, what sorts of communities you're a part of, what sorts of opportunities have presented themselves to you, and how you've taken advantage of them. This is a time to be really introspective about your life journey in different geographic locations and how that's affected you as a student, as a person, as a son or daughter, or whatever. It's just an opportunity for you to reflect on the communities you've been a part of. And so my advice for you is, if you got this type of essay, you'd want to try to reflect, be very introspective, and reflect on how locations that you've lived in have affected your growth as an individual. Okay, that was a nice and short one, so let's move on to our last prompt, which is communities or groups. Pick one and tell us why it is important to you and how it has shaped you. So this, I'd say, is kind of a more specific version of this prompt. This prompt is kind of asking you, tell us about all the places you've lived, how long, and how that's affected you. This is tell us about just one community or group that you're a part of and how that's important to you and how that's affected you. So I kind of wanted to mention an activity that I had done that really inspired me to pursue medicine, and that was volunteering at the pediatric emergency room. So I wrote about that. And I said, I volunteer weekly at the pediatric emergency room in Inova Loudoun Hospital. Because hospitals can be intimidating to young children, my main responsibility is to comfort them by various means, from reading books, playing games, elucidating some treatment processes, existing in a community of doctors and nurses, working assiduously to provide quality care has heightened my compassion and taught me the significance of listening to others before preemptively voicing one's own opinions or diagnosis. I have learned of the commonality of existence which compels medical professionals to overcome challenges and work cooperatively to save lives. So I was kind of broad here. I just wanted to talk about some of the things that I did in the emergency room. And to be honest, most of my experiences in high school at emergency room wasn't as intense or strenuous as my experiences later on in college or medical school, just because I wasn't really skilled or trained to be able to offer that much support. So mostly what I was doing is just comforting the children, but I kind of reflected on how being around these doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals really improved and helped me and just helped me grow as a person. And that's kind of what they were looking for, is how did you reflect on the community? How did you reflect on the group? And how did you grow as a result of those interactions? And so that's what I wanted to reflect on and explain and just kind of share in this essay. But this group can be this community or group that you're answering. If you get a prompt like this, it could be like a cultural group, religious group, it could be a church community, it could be a volunteer group like I wrote about, it could be like a math team, it could be a sports team, it could be anything. It could be like a fan group of this anime that you like. It's just any group or community that's really affected you. You just want to try to reflect and be introspective and explain how that's helped you grow. And if you do that, you're perfectly fine. All right. That's it for this video. Be on the lookout for a lot more videos to come. I'm really excited that you clicked on this channel and you gave this a watch. Thanks for making it all the way through. If you want me to edit your essays, I'm more than happy to do that. There's a link in the bio, or just a link in the descriptions if you wanna pursue that. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. See you in the next video. Bye, everybody.